everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm author ER Reading, and today for you I have a book review. Alright, welcome to my channel. Please do subscribe if you're new here, but today we're going to be covering a review of the Raven Cycle series. Now before I get into the review, I wanted to say that I have already filmed this video and it didn't turn out exactly as I was hoping, and because I wanted to do this series justice in the review, I figured I would refilm and do that here for you today. So this will be a spoiler-free review until the end, but I'll leave timestamps so that you can skip around and skip the spoiler section. Alright, so we're going to talk about these books, which is the Raven Cycle series, the 4 books, and I just finished these books at the end of August, and I'm filming this October 13th, so it's been a little bit, but I still have a lot of things fresh in my memory, so let's get to it. So this is the first book, and I'm just going to read the back to kind of give a summary review of kind of what the series is about. So every year, Blue Sargent stands next to her clairvoyant mother as the soon-to-be-dead walk past. Blue never sees them until this year, when a boy emerges from the dark and speaks to her. His name is Gansey, and he is a rich student at, forgive me, I'm going to say this wrong, Aglionby, the local private school. Blue has a policy of staying away from Aglionby boys, known as the Raven Boys. It can only mean trouble, but Blue is drawn to Gansey in a way that she can't entirely explain. He is on a quest that has encompassed 3 other Raven Boys: Adam, the scholarship student who resents the privilege around him; Ronan, the fierce soul whose emotions range from anger to despair. For as long as she can remember, Blue has been warned that she will cause her true love to die. She does not believe in true love and has never thought that this would be a problem. But as her life becomes caught up in strange and sinister world of Raven Boys, she's not so sure anymore. So that's the blurb on the back of the first book of the Raven Boys, and I'm going to just kind of dive into a basic summary review of each of the books before I give an overview. So this book is book 1. This is book 1, The Raven Boys, and I'm just going to start off with this book drew me in right away. Now, I honestly didn't know anything about the plot. I only knew some things about the characters because my friend had recommended this series to me, so thank you very much. And I went in with a lot of blindness, but also some insights, which I'll get into in the spoilers. But this book drew me in instantly, and her writing style, Maggie, has the most interesting, quick-paced writing style, and it's beautiful. I'll talk about it in the last book, but there was a chapter that completely blew me away. But this book, particularly, I truly enjoyed the characters, and the plot is so interesting. I was always excited for the next chapter, the next POV. I was never upset when it changed POVs and I got to read the next person's perspective. Not saying that I wasn't upset about the cliffhanger, but I just wanted to know everything. I wanted to know each perspective. I wanted to see everything, and that to me suggests that there is really good writing in this book. The group of friends and just the characters in general through this entire series, the characters are just so well fleshed out. I don't think I've ever read characters like Maggie's written these characters, and for me that is just so amazing because I personally love characters over plot. Even if the plot is meh, I can handle it for decent characters. Now, there are lots of scenes in here that I could go into spoilery sections of, but let's just say it started off strong for the series. But I'm going to talk about the one issue that I've seen and talk about another issue that people bring up when they're talking about the Raven Cycle. Alright, so honestly for this book, there wasn't any point where I really hated anything in it or anything about it. The thing that a lot of people notice, and that I definitely noticed, it didn't bug me because of the way that her world and characters react and just keep going. You just want to read forever. And that was pacing, and I'm gonna break that down a little bit for you. A lot of people say that she was really bad at pacing, that it was just such a quick climax and then just end. And I agree. I do think that she definitely has some pacing issues through this first book. It's very discovery, a whole bunch of learning, a bunch of information, quick climax with a lot of stuff happening, and then it finishes the book. And we're going to talk about how that improved or didn't improve through the rest of the series. But for this book, it definitely was quite obvious that there was a quick climax and then the book was finished. Now, the second issue that a lot of people have with this series is the plot. And I honestly, personally didn't understand this issue with this series because when I read it, it was the most intriguing plot that I have read in a very, very long time. And I don't get surprised easily. I can often predict outcomes and predict plot twists. And this one, I could not. I could not predict outcomes or plot through the entire series, which to me is just amazing, and I'll get more into that into the spoiler sections, but I'll just say that the plot to me was super amazing, and I honestly don't see where people get their problem with the plot. Moving on to book 2, The Dream Thieves. This is a lot of people's least favorite book in the entire series, and I'm gonna kind of go over why. I think it's one of my favorites in the series. Now, the reason people probably dislike this one is for the main character. It kind of shifts who is the main throughout the series, but in this one it highly focuses on Ronan and his kind of journey with his particular problem, we'll call it, without being too spoilery. So Ronan is actually one of my favorite characters. I'm gonna just sprinkle some excitement over this book. If you've heard bad reviews, this is not one of them for this book. This book had me just so excited, and the magic system is so unique. I've never read anything else like it. Ronan has my heart and my soul. He is just the most amazing, awesome character with the growth through this entire book, and we get to see truly how he reacts to things, and some surprising things happened through this book, and I can't get enough of Ronan, honestly. And that's why I loved one of the reasons that I loved this series and this book. My second favorite thing about this book was the bad guy. Now, without going into spoilers, this bad guy was my favorite bad guy that I have ever read. And if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this bad guy. It was just the way that Maggie gave us information and then told us she had information but didn't give the rest of the information to us and just kept us hooked through the entire thing to find out what the bad guy's deal was, what was happening, and I loved every second of it. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is pacing and plot for this book as well. That's kind of going to be a theme through all of these books. So the plot of this book was really, really interesting. I was so intrigued with certain characters that got introduced, got more of the page time than other characters did, and it was very interesting to see how our main cast reacted in this situation. Now, the one thing I disliked, sort of, and I've heard other people say this as well, is that the friend group wasn't all together most of the book, and I do agree they are apart for reasons, and I do understand the reasons, and I think it works for the plot. However, when they are together, there is a fun dynamic that you just don't have when they're separate, even though each character in and of themselves is just amazing. Next thing is the pacing, and the pacing in this book is also very blatantly climax finish with slow through the entire thing, climax finish. However, she did a lot better in this one than the first one, so she obviously improved as a writer in that area. This is book 3, Blue Lily Lily Blue. I'm blown away. I honestly don't have a whole lot to say because there's just so much that goes on in this book. It was just crazy and amazing, and the character arc of Adam in specific was just phenomenal because he was struggling so much in the second book, and it was just so great. I don't even have words. I loved the romance between certain characters in this book. I'm not going to spoil it because there are some predetermined things. However, this book, the romance starts to bloom between the specific two couples that I'm thinking of, and just so beautiful and amazing, and I just can't rave enough about this book. It is so good, and it is the shortest one out of the 4 books. Now, my issues with this book are mainly, I wish one of the couples, and I'll get into this in the spoiler section, I wish one of the couples got together in this book. It just would have given us more time to fully see their relationship bloom and grow and become something just more fantastic than it already was. Now, the pacing in this book was mountains above where the previous book was. The pacing in this book outshined the previous two. It was so good. She did such a great job of leading us in and giving us some flows, and then having the climax and a little bit of build down just to give us that extra little bit of hook to the next book. And this one was way better at that. So this is the fourth and final book, The Raven King. Wow. Just wow is this book. This is wow. I'm having a really hard time at this point. The last two books just have so much content that's just spoilery. It's really hard not to spoil what happens. However, with Gansey and the team just trying to figure out what they needed to do and everything coming to a close, a lot happens. The plot twists in this book didn't stop coming. They were just non-stop, and I was blown away. It was amazing, and it was almost like she had two climaxes, and it was just so woven together. It was beautiful. It was amazing. Now, when I was about this point in the book, I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna cry at the end. I think it'll probably be fine. At about this point, keep in mind there's a short story at the end of this short story. It's a miniature story. I was gone to the world. I was sobbing constantly. It was really hard to read the page. I was crying so much. If you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. There was one particular scene that I'm going to dive into in just a minute, but it was beautiful, brilliant. Now I'm going to get into the things that bugged me a little bit. Now, everybody has their opinion. This is my opinion. I think this book could have used 10,000 more words. And that's because of the way the ending wrapped up. Because there's so much to this world, so much to the magic system, so much to the friends, the couples, everything, it needed more explanation. And because it's so complicated, it needed those extra 10,000 words to explain what was going on, what was happening, how to actually, I just needed more. I just needed more on this book, this ending. Because I needed more, the ending with me it's still conflicting whether I enjoyed it or I didn't. If you've read it, you probably know what I mean. It truly, when things start coming together with a whole bunch of stuff that's been throughout the series, it can be really hard to wrap up a series. And I both loved and hated this ending, so I'm gonna just stay conflicted on this for a while. It's been almost like half a month since I read this book, and I'm still conflicted on how I feel about this ending. And the pacing through this book was just as amazing as the previous one. They were so good. She was way better at it for the last two books in the series. Alright, so overall, this series was amazing. I just highly recommend it to you. However, fair warning beforehand, there is a character, Ronan, who swears a lot, and there's some drinking and some trigger warnings that you should probably look up before you get into this series, because there are some, and but I adored this series. I have 3 favorite series now, so I've got The Hunger Games, which is my first one. So amazing. Highly loved by the world. Second one, The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. You'll see a set right there on my bookshelf. And now The Raven Cycle. And it's been really hard for me to get into new books because they're just not as good as this series was. Now I'm picky and particular, and I need to be surprised every chapter. Reasons to read this series: the character arcs, the plot, the amazing writing. The antagonists are just insanely beautiful and amazingly written. And her writing style is just so quirky and amazing, and I want to emulate that in my own writing. Welcome to the spoiler section. Alright, now this section I'm going to dive into a few things specifically, and I'm going to kind of rant on them for a minute, and then we'll get to the ending of this video. First thing is in book 1, and that is Noah. And I actually knew in the book, before going into the book, that Noah was dead. I already knew that he was a ghost. My friend had told me that, so I expected that I wouldn't be shocked. I was wrong. I was very wrong. I was shocked. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. Also in the first book, I was sobbing. At the point where Blue had the vision of kissing Gansey, I barely knew these characters yet, and I was already crying. So imagine me at the end when it actually happens. I was a wreck. Glendower. So this plot twist at the end of the series, I almost expected it, but I didn't expect it. But also, like, I have a rant on Divergent. If you've ever met me in person and I talk about Divergent, I do have a rant on the third book, and that is because, here are spoilers for Divergent, but when she made the Divergent not special and this place not special, it ruined the entire thing, because she took something that was so amazing, so special, and tore it down, ruined it, told you it was lies. So now when you go back to read it, the book series is ruined for you, because it ruins the world building, everything that you've believed. It's a lie, and it makes the book series a lot worse. However, with this case, sorry, my phone was being weird on me. In this case, the point of Gansey searching for Glendower was heavily embedded in the entire plot, in the entire system of this series. And yet, when it turns out that Glendower was dead, I wasn't necessarily mad. And this is because it actually allowed room for error in the characters. It allowed for the plot to actually finish through the way that we've been presented the entire series. It was beautiful and it made sense. And also the way that it was able to say goodbye to Noah. That made me really, sad, but happy, and I really appreciated that. I mean, I wish I had had a little bit more time in that section to kind of explain things a little bit better, but it was amazing. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the ending and Adam, and this, my favorite chapter I think I've ever read. So if you've read the last book, or I'm just going to give you a little bit of context, Adam has just attacked Ronan, who is his love interest, and he has strangled him and he's being used by the demon. So essentially they blindfold him and tie his hands around his back, and he's sitting in the back of the vehicle when they're driving and they're trying to solve this problem of the ley line and demon and everything's happening, and Ronan starts dying. Still emotional about this. And he's sitting in the back seat, and the way that he can't do anything, he can't even see what's happening, all he can hear is the commotion. It was so beautifully written and made me feel so strongly about this scene. I'm blown away. It just was so amazing that this character who's been through so much was helpless in this moment where his love interest was dying, and he was just devastated, and it was so heartbreaking, and I wasn't expecting this to be my favorite scene of all time. Speaking of couples, here's my next spoilery bit. These are my opinions on the couples. So in the first book, Adam and Blue have a relationship for a little bit, which shocked me because of course Gansey and Blue are going to end up together, and so I was a little bit confused. However, it definitely helped the character growth and us to see little bits of certain character arcs that we wouldn't have seen if they weren't together, so I'm still appreciative even though it was a little bit awkward. However, Blue and Gansey are just perfect for each other, and the way that they got introduced to each other is just beautiful, and it's so amazing, and these scenes that Maggie comes up with, I don't know how she comes up with them. They're so great and amazing. The second couple is Adam and Ronan. I actually knew this going in. Again, I knew a couple character things going in. This was one of them, and it still made me really happy when they ended up together. I wish that they had more time together. Same with Blue and Gansey. I wish that Blue and Gansey had gotten together in the third book, and that Adam and Ronan had been together more of the last book, just for me as a fan wanting more of their relationship to see how it plays out. However, there is another trilogy that just came out. She's coming out with the third book right now as time of recording. The Dreamers trilogy, and Ronan is in that, and Adam a little bit, so I'm still excited to see where that goes. Now, speaking of Ronan and Adam and everything else, we're going to talk about the magic system. So the dreaming and bringing objects into real life is insane. I had never heard of this before. It shocked me. It was so beautifully done in the entire thing, and that plot twist at the end. This is going to lead into one of my other points. Cobb's water. Oh my goodness, it was so perfect, the plot twist. I couldn't have predicted it, and yet at the same time I had an inkling, and yet it was so great, and I was so shocked. And the way that Ronan learns his abilities and learns through his frenemy with Kavinsky, that's a whole other thing. Kavinsky was such a unique, interesting character, and actually pretty much the antagonist of the second book, even though Mr. Grey is technically the antagonist of the second book. Now, honestly, Cobb's water is one of the coolest things about this magic system. Now, this has been a bit rambly, this section, however, it's really hard to express how cool this magic system is and how cool Cobb's water is, and everything that it does in the story and to the plot is just amazing. Now, my last spoilery opinion that I didn't get to point out at all is actually a character, and this is Tansie's sister, Helen. And Helen, I loved her from the second we met her. The second she was in that helicopter and we all hopped in, loved her to death. I wish she had gotten more time in these books. That was my one thing. I just wanted more of Helen. She was so amazing, and I just wanted more. So that's the end of this spoilery section. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do really, really, really love this book series, and I would highly recommend it to you. And I will check back with you guys again sometime when I read the next series, or if you want any specific videos on any of the things I covered, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you very soon with another video.